us, yeah, Lord, you gave us the land. You dwelt among us, you went before, yet we asked to be something we were never meant for. We chose what we could see and touch, thrones and crowns in the strength of a man, and slowly our hearts were shaped by that choice, till injustice grew where trust had been. From king to king, the wound went deep, till the land itself could no longer stand. What began as a wish to be like the world ended with chains and a foreign land. You did not choose us to blend in or measure ourselves by the nation's gain. You chose us to carry your name alive, to show the world what it means to live by faith, to walk in justice, mercy, truth, to trust our King, go unseen, to be a kingdom under your rule, a people holy, set apart and free. We were called to be yours alone, set apart, known by your name, not like the nations, not like the world, but a people who walk in your
From the far edge of the Northlands, God comes with lightning speed. As the Lord of many peoples, blind with pride and drunk with greed. Shields like shadows, spears like thunder, horses black against the dawn. All their banners set for plunder, all their hatred driving on. They say, now we take the mountains, now we strip the peaceful land. Now we fall upon the people, gathered by a greater hand. Like a storm they roll in fury, drive the horde with frightful aim. But they do not know the Holy One, and they do not know His name. They come against the peaceful dwellings, against the land restored from war, against the fields, against the shepherds, brought back home forevermore. They thought the stillness meant no power, they thought the silence meant no king. They did not hear the wrath behind it, nor the storm their feet would bring. Then the jealousy of Yahweh kindled, and the mountains reeled in dread. Every creature felt the trembling, every tower bowed its head. Cliffs were torn and walls were broken, all the proud things of man fell low. For the God who planted Israel rose against the host below. I will make known my holy name in the midst of Israel. Blood and plague ran through the camp, hail and fire split the sky. Sulfur burned upon the riders, banners dropped into the flame. On the mountains of my people, judgment fell on those to blame. So the armies of the Northlands fell upon the heights they cursed, and the land they came to ravage, saw the hand of Yahweh striking first. Vows were shattered, pride was swallowed, all their boasting turned to smoke. Not by mortal strength were they broken, but by every word he spoke. Then the nations looked and trembled, then remnants Israel could see. He who gathered is their keeper, he who planted set them free, and his holy name was lifted in the sight of earth and sky. For the God of Israel still reigns with all power from on high. I will make known my holy name in the midst of Israel. I will rise in fire and fury, and the nations all shall tell. There is none above the heavens, there is none of greater fame. I will defend my chosen people, I will sanctify my name. I will sanctify my name. From the north they came with violence, on the hills their strength was slain. Yahweh rose in wrath and glory, now the nations know his name.
When the thunder has fallen silent, when the smoke has cleared away, still your glory fills the heavens, still your truth outshines the day. You are holy in your judgment, you are faithful, you are true. You defend the ones you gather, there is none like you. You are mighty in the mountains, you are mercy to the weak. You remember every promise, you are near to those who seek. You restore the lost and broken, you bring life where hope was through. You are shepherd, king and keeper, there is none like you. There is none like you, oh Yahweh, none above you, none beside. Holy, righteous, everlasting, Lord of power, Lord of light. Let the remnant sing your praises. Let the coastlands hear your voice. Let the kings of earth be humbled. Let the waiting hearts rejoice. From the valleys to the heavens, let your praise the whole earth move. Well known, our God forever. There is none like you. Will prevail, you strengthen, you help, you stay. You never turn your face away. I will wait for Yahweh. I will rise again. You renew the weak. You strengthen the spent. I will mount up with wings like eagles.
Welcome, I'm Dawn.
I'm Eliyahu, and this is Zion Tabernacle of Greater Austin, Texas.
Are you among the remnant on the narrow road to life?
Do you long for the deeper truth only the remnant grasp?
Then Zion is the place for you. Now, here's spiritual food at the right time.
This is Eliyahu ben David Bet Midrash. Here's Eliyahu ben David.
Utterly destroy and plunder the giants. Isn't that a great title? You know, some people think there never was a giant in the world. But really, as I pointed out in my newsletter, there is lots of proof that giants have actually existed. And in our lesson tonight in the book of Deuteronomy, we're going to read about what happened when the second generation of Israel after the Exodus met up with the giants. And it's quite an exciting discussion. We're going to go on now, and here's a few of the highlights that you have to look forward to. We're going to consider the land of the giants in the area of Canaan. We're going to look at the tribes of giants that dwelt there. Yes, there weren't just a few giants, there were tribes of giants. We're going to consider the origin of the giants that dwelt there in that area, and the defeat of the giants Sihon and Og. We're going to consider the destruction of their nations and plunder and land grants that went to Israel after destroying them. And of course, we're wanting to look at why this is important to us today. This is not just ancient history. In order to look into this, we have a guest tonight, and here he is. Welcome, Solomon.
Hello, it's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
So, Solomon, we thank you for coming and being with us and helping us out with this tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure that it'll be very, very fun.
Okay, well, let's get into this tonight. Here, it tells us these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan. We have in this box that you see there where Israel actually was at that particular time. Now, we're going to move on to the next slide. It's telling us after he had struck Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth, at Edrei, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this Torah. So, if you don't get this, then it's going to seem kind of strange as we go on, that what is happening here is Moses is declaring all of this from this location that you see here. But as soon as we start getting into this, what he's doing is he's rehearsing the history that they had gone through already and recounting that, what had happened up to that point. And Solomon, maybe you could read the first few verses for us here.
So, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, Yahweh spoke to me, saying, You are to pass over Ar, the border of Moab, today. When you come near the border of the children of Ammon, don't bother them, nor contend with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the children of Ammon for a possession, because I have given it to the children of Lot for possession.
Okay, so it says, so when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people. What men of war is this talking about?
It's talking about the first generation that came out of Egypt.
Exactly, and we learned that after all that Yahweh had done to bring them out of Egypt, and all the miracles he did fighting for them, when they got to the border of the land, they complained that there were giants in the land, and then they refused to enter into the land. So, do you remember what Yahweh said to them when they refused to go in?
Well, he essentially told them that since they didn't want to listen to what he had commanded and what he wanted to give to them, he said to them that they would spend the next 40 years dying in the desert.
That's basically what happened. So they just lived out the rest of their life in the wilderness, never fulfilling what had been Yahweh's purpose for them. And that was going to be left to the next generation to do. So this is the point where this is happening, where all of the men of that previous generation are now gone, and the second generation is now ready to enter into Yahweh's will. And so this is kind of an exciting turning point, I think, in the entire story. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that probably this second generation, they've been hearing from their parents over these 40 years about the failure. And, I think they're determined that they won't do the same thing.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So here now, in this part of the story that's being told, they're not yet at the location that we were looking at in the beginning. Instead, they've now moved up through the Moabite territory. And as we look at the map, we look at the place where I've circled Ar. This is where Yahweh told them to go, to that place. Now, there's some contention about exactly where Ar was and even what it was. Some people think it was like a district. Some people think it was a city, and it probably was a city, but we notice its strategic location. Right in that particular corner, it's very close to the border where Moab meets the Amorites and the Ammonites. Right at that corner where those three nations meet, Moab, the Amorites, and the Ammonites. Was Israel to just go ahead and start killing everybody in sight?
No.
What did Yahweh tell them?
Well, he told them not to bother them, to just go through peacefully, because this was the land that was given to the children of Lot. So in a way, they're kind of like relatives. You know, you don't go fighting relatives every time you're in the neighborhood. You know,
Right, exactly. And of course, Yahweh is leading them in such a very specific way so that also they can easily win the battle. And I think that's interesting. Well, let's go on and consider this. Please read for us these next few verses.
So when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, Yahweh spoke to me, saying, "You are to pass over Ar, the border of Moab, today. When you come near the border of the children of Ammon, don't bother them, nor contend with them. For I will not give you any of the land of the children of Ammon for a possession, because I have given it to the children of Lot for a possession."
Okay, so now we're reading this as it's a completely different scripture for a different reason. What we're trying to do here is pick out certain things we can learn from the text that aren't necessarily about the story. So here what I was noticing is who owns the earth?
Well, it seems here that Yahweh has actually distributed it through the various inhabitants.
Right. Now, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because Yahweh created it, so wouldn't it be his?
Exactly. It's his to give, and it's ultimately entirely his.
Exactly.
Because he created
And
it.
this is a biblical principle. We find this throughout the scriptures. Genesis 10 also gives us a very clear picture of this, that it's not only Israel that he apportioned out a certain portion of land to, but it lists all the nations there and the allotment of land he had given all of them. I think this is very important to realize that it's Yahweh that owns the land and can decide what to do with it. Now, I put up there a graphic about the 2030 agenda. And why do you think I'd put that up here with this verse?
Well, because they want to challenge that claim in the sense that they want to establish their own possession over the earth as a one-world government.
That's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, if you look into the 2030 agenda, this is exactly what it claims to do, is basically take control over the earth, the people, everything in the earth, as if it belongs to them. Do you think Yahweh's going to agree with that?
Not in the slightest.
Yeah, so this is a major clash with Yahweh's claim to the world, and this is coming up very soon when this clash is going to happen. So I think just as that second generation was about to enter into a pivotal time for them, I believe that this generation of remnant Israel is about to enter into a pivotal time for us, because the world is changing in such a way where these same principles that we're looking at as we go through this part of Devarim are actually being activated right now in our world. And we're going to see some other examples of that as we continue. Let's go on to our next section. I guess I'll read a little bit. It says, "That also is considered a land of giants. Rephaim lived there before, but the Ammonites call them Zamzuim, a great people, many and tall as the Anakim. But Yahweh destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and lived in their place, as he did for the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir, when he destroyed the Harim from before them. And they succeeded them and lived in their place, even to this day. And the Avim, who lived in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorites, who came out of Caphtor, destroyed them and lived in their place." So what it's pointing out to us here is tribes of giants. And let's look at the map. Here's a map that shows us where these giants lived. And you notice Deuteronomy 2:20 in the King James Version says a land of giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time. This is the word Rephaim, and these are the giants. As you can see from the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew definition, this word means giants, Rephaim, and it says old tribe of giants. So what we're talking about is the land of the giants. And yes, the first generation of Israel wouldn't even go up against these giants. And now the second generation was being told to do so. And here are the tribes it mentions, and you can see about where they were located in the land. The first group that the Israelites were going up against is the Rephaim, which means lofty men, and they lived in the area of ancient Bashan. The king of Bashan was the giant Og, a descendant of the Rephaim. And then right next to them were the Zuzim, the tall ones. And it tells us that these giants were in the land before the Canaanites came. Do you find that interesting?
That is interesting.
So they were very early to come into this area. So I think that's interesting. And you can see the others, they're all scattered around what became the land of Israel and was the land of Canaan. In red, you have the tribes of Canaan that came in and superseded some of these giants. But as we'll find as we go on, they didn't totally wipe them out. And they actually ended up being ruled by these giants, which is very, very interesting. Any questions about that?
No, so far that all seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, well, we have some more here. Here's a quote that I think is interesting. During the earliest times, there were giants who migrated into the land of Canaan. During the earliest recorded history, there were great migrations from the Persian Gulf area. This would have been after the Tower of Babel, around 2500 BC. The Bible records them in Genesis and Deuteronomy, the verses we're looking at here. We have been, in many of our presentations at Zion, looking at these giants from various times and in various presentations that we've given. And it's interesting to look at the origin of the giants and how they happened to migrate to this area near Mount Hermon. I think this is very interesting that this is where they came to very early, right after the languages were confused at the Tower of Babel. Here's something that I wrote and taught on my radio program. This is number 274 of the On the Road to Zion radio program. Cain built a city. And I think you'll find that extremely interesting. What you'll find is that Cain and his son really originated the ancient mystery religion that involved essentially worship of angelic beings that came down to the earth. And in Genesis chapter 6, it talks about them. Would you read those verses for us?
Sure. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually.
So now this is talking about before the flood, that these giants were in the earth. And where did they come from?
Well, they came from angels who decided to abandon Yahweh and join Satan.
That's exactly what happened. They came down to the earth and they mated with human females. And the result, the offspring, were giants. And you notice when it talks about the giants in those days, it says, and also after that, which, what is this saying is that this same thing happened later on after the flood, after that, after this pre-flood time. And exactly how this happened, there's more about this in the book of Enoch. And we want to remember about the book of Enoch. It is quoted in the scriptures as an authority. So it's of great interest to us. Let's look at that. Here in the book of Enoch, chapter 13, it explains this. It says, "And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us women from among the children of men, and beget us children. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon." Now, isn't that interesting? This is where the angels that sinned made their entry point into the world, is on Mount Hermon. And right after the Tower of Babel, this is where giants in that age returned to, Mount Hermon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any connection there?
Yeah, seems like more angels decided to come down.
It's very, very possible that happened. And obviously, this is a renewal of the ancient worship of these angelic beings. And this is what happened. We have more. This is from a midrash called the 70 Nations, and you can see it listed here where you can find it. It's number 12. And it talks about what happened at Babel. And it goes into this in detail if anyone wants to know more about it. At Babel, and around that time where the people all lived in that one area on the plains of Shinar, they turned away from Yahweh. They specifically chose to simply ignore him. And they turned to the same demonic religion from before the flood. And what happened was, because of this, the same thing happened again. And as a matter of fact, these ziggurats were used for this purpose. Instead of Mount Hermon, which they didn't have on the plains of Shinar, they built these ziggurats, as had been done before the flood. And these were areas where this unholy connection was made between demonic fallen angels and human women. This particular inscription that you see here, this tablet that has been found, is there anything unusual about that you notice?
Well, there's a pretty big guy on there.
Pretty big guy.
And they're all following after him.
Exactly. And there's lots of evidence like this that has been dug up in that area. Modern archaeologists look at this. Do you think they believe in giants?
No, they probably just think that is kind of like an artist rendition of one of their gods, is probably what they would say.
Yeah, they do say that, and sometimes what they say is that that's the king, and they make him look really big because he's really important. But you know what? It's a giant. It's a giant. So it's all a matter of what your interpretation is, right? You can say it's not a giant, but when you look at the picture, it's a giant. And we have other pictures like this. There's one of a very, very famous king from this time period who actually has been shown to be the person Nimrod in the scriptures. And he's carrying a lion in his arm the way we might carry our puppy dog. Just a huge creature. And his story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, even includes him going to Mount Hermon to kill Yahweh for bringing the flood.
Huh.
It's quite an amazing story. So there is evidence of this demonic religion continuing on in the earth, in the Babel area. Of course, what this means is what was actually happening with these fallen angels is they were seeking to corrupt the seed of man. And having these giants in the earth was really their purpose in order to do that, to corrupt the seed of man. Do you think anything like that is happening today?
I think probably more than it was back then. I think they just have a pretty good way of kind of shadowing that.
Well, I think you're right. This is kind of interesting. From the World Economic Forum, these are the Agenda 2030 people, and they're real into this whole idea of changing the human race. This person is a spokesman for them, Yuval Noah Harari, and he has taught a lot about this, where they want to change human beings literally into something else, where we're tied into computers and even our genetic structure is changed. Essentially, scientism corrupting the essence of man. So this time it's not giants in the normal sense that are doing that, but it's actually, I think you'd have to say, financial giants. We even call them giants sometimes, giant tech, that is threatening to do this exact same thing, doing some pretty weird stuff, pretty weird stuff in seeking to change mankind. How do you think Yahweh feels about that?
Well, I can't imagine he's very happy. He certainly wasn't before the flood, so I'd have to imagine that he's pretty angry with all this stuff that they're trying to do.
I believe he must be, because he created humans to be humans, not computer hybrids. So I think something very similar is happening today. Well, let's move on. Would you read this for us, these verses?
Sure. Rise up, take your journey, and pass over the valley of the Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon, the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it, and contend with him in battle. Today I will begin to put the dread of you and the fear of you on the people who are under the whole sky, who shall hear the report of you, and shall tremble, and be in anguish because of you.
Any thoughts about any of this?
Yep, I think that it seems like Yahweh is seeking to make his name known and seeking to establish his nation as a powerful one.
Exactly. This is interesting to me too, because like we said, this is the turning point, and now the second generation is actually getting instructions to go in and face the giant, Sihon, and his army, to contend with him in battle and to possess the land. And it does say begin to possess it, and we'll understand why it says begin, I think, a little better in a few minutes. But I think when we understand, and we will see, we're going to look into this more, that Sihon is one of these giants. What Yahweh says all the more makes sense when he says that he's going to put the dread of you and fear in the people. Because when you have ordinary human beings going in and fighting against giants and totally wiping them out, that's pretty scary, isn't it?
Yes, I would have to imagine that that sounds like a pretty terrifying force.
When those people ended up at your border, I think you're going to be scared. I think you're going to be trembling.
Yeah.
And of course, that makes the battle that much easier for Israel. Pretty amazing, very amazing stuff. Well, let's go on now. Please read these verses for us all.
But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him, for Yahweh your Elohim hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into your hand, as it is today. Yahweh said to me, Behold, I have begun to deliver up Sihon and his land before you. Begin to possess, that you may inherit his land. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all his army, to battle at Jahaz.
Now, I think this is very interesting, because who is actually the aggressor here?
Sihon.
Yeah, it's actually Sihon that is the aggressor. Israel is being nice in a way, saying, just let us cross your land and so on. But what is happening is it's Sihon that is being obstinate and then actually attacking Israel. It's very interesting. So here is Sihon the giant feeling pretty secure in his place there, going out against Israel. And what we're going to see about this is that what Yahweh says about possessing the land, he's ready to back up. This gives us great encouragement as the remnant of Israel, because when Yahweh tells us in multiple prophecies that we've studied already, that he's going to bring us back to the land, that he has a place for us there. We don't know where that is right now, right? Not exactly.
Right.
It's in the land, but we don't know exactly how he's going to do that. But should we doubt that he's going to do it?
Not at all.
Shouldn't doubt it, because it's his. And just like he brought Israel into that land where Sihon was king and gave it to him, he is going to do this with the remnant of Israel, where he will bring us into our possession of the land. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to uproot the present residents out of the land, Jewish people that live there, but it does mean that he has a place for us and he's going to bring us there. So I think this is very interesting for us to think about when we look at the fact that it's Yahweh that owns the land and he has this promise for us. Here's something interesting. The question is, what was Israel up against with Sihon? Amos 2:9 gives us a better picture of what really happened there. It says, I destroyed the Amorite from before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars. Now, this is talking about the cedars of Lebanon, of great fame, there in that area of Mount Hermon and around there. And I looked this up at a gardening site. The link is there. And it says about these cedars of Lebanon, a cedar of Lebanon tree is tall with spreading branches. It can rise to 80 feet tall with a spread of 50 feet. And it's saying about these Amorites that their height was like the height of the cedars. What do you think?
I think that's really tall.
That's really tall. Yeah, pretty amazing. Now here's a bunch of giants for you. That little guy at the beginning of the pictures here, you see him? He's like kind of minuscule.
Yeah.
That's an ordinary 6-foot guy. And the one right next to him is similar to Og the giant might have been, that range of 12 feet to 18 feet. Similar to Sihon. So far as we know, the giants there in that area were like in this kind of range. But then there were other giants that it mentions here, the earlier Canaanite giants. And that perhaps might be some of the ones it's talking about. As a matter of fact, when we look at Numbers 13:33, it says, there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which came of the giants, and we were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So, there might have been some of these really huge giants there too. From information we have, these range somewhere from 24 feet to as big as 36 feet, which is pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, we have more explaining about these giants, and I'd like to share more about it. I have all of the various resources that I took this from in the next slide. So I'm going to stop a minute on that, and if anyone wants to see this, or you could stop the video or whatever you can do to get this if you want these resources. But this is a summary that I'm about to share. It says, in their day, Sihon and Og commanded wide respect as great and mighty monarchs. Rabbinical literature identifies Sihon as Og's brother. The ancient rabbis likewise list both kings as grandsons of Shemhazai, a fallen angel. Sihon, they further write, resembled Og in stature and bravery. The rabbis sometimes referred to him as the Canaanite, claiming that he was overlord of that land and had over there many vassal kings who paid him tribute, and the 5 Midianite kings, later slain by the Israelites, came under his suzerainty. Mustering a great army, Sihon marched out to check Israel's advance toward Canaan. At Jahaz, a small town in the plains of Moab, he led a charge against the Hebrews. What he thought would be an easy battle suddenly turned into a rout of the Amorites. On that day, at Jahaz, the giant king and all his sons fell, mortally wounded. Of course, his sons were giants too, right?
Right.
Does it make sense to you that the giants would end up ruling the various nations throughout that area?
Yeah, I think it does, because they were probably pretty intimidating and no doubt very powerful. So it makes sense to me that they would take control.
So this is what the rabbinical literature says about them. Here are some of the resources. People can look at any of these and get more information. Josephus, for example, has information about this. And I think it's very interesting to look at some of this other information. But let's go on with the scriptures now. Would you read these verses, please?
I sent messengers out of the wilderness of Kedemoth to Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, Let me pass through your land. I will go along by the highway. I will turn neither to the right hand nor to the left hand. You shall sell me food for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, that I may drink. Just let me pass through on my feet, as the children of Esau who dwell in Seir, and the Moabites who dwell in Ar did to me, until I pass over the Jordan into the land which Yahweh our Elohim gives us.
So as you read this, do you see Israel actually attacking Sihon?
No, they're actually being pretty diplomatic and they're giving a very reasonable offer, and they're just wanting to go on by.
You know, as I read this, it reminds me of what happened with Moses when he first talked to Pharaoh. He had a very reasonable offer. Just let us go for 3 days and worship our God, right? And
Right.
there was a very similar kind of response from Pharaoh. And it seems that Yahweh does things this way to show the heart of the person that he's dealing with here. In this case, King Sihon. We have more. Let's read these verses.
Yahweh our Elohim delivered him up before us, and we struck him, his sons, and all his army. We took all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed every inhabited city, with the women and the little ones. We left no one remaining. Only the livestock we took for plunder for ourselves, with the plunder of the cities which we had taken, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, and the city that is in the valley, even to Gilead. There was not a city too high for us. Yahweh our Elohim delivered up all before us. Only to the land of the children of Ammon you didn't come near. All the banks of the river Jabbok, and the cities of the hill country, and wherever Yahweh our Elohim forbade us.
Okay, thoughts on this?
Well, Yahweh is just helping them to really sweep through. And, I think it's interesting here that they were told to kill everybody. But, it makes sense because these weren't just like your average Joes. First of all, they were giants, and they're not even intended to be creation. But also, they practiced insanely wicked things.
Right. Yeah, really insanely wicked things. And the reason they even went to that area is because they were continuing that demonic religion. So yeah, what you're saying is exactly true. They give the credit to Yahweh, that it was Yahweh that delivered him up before us. Although that's pretty obvious in this case, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Because there's no way they're going to be beating those giants unless Yahweh does it. I think this speaks to us about victory in our lives. What is required for us to have victory in our lives so far as doing Yahweh's will?
Showing up.
That's it.
Yep, when he asks us to do something, be there, and he'll carry us through.
Sometimes we don't even realize it, but fear holds us back from stepping forward when Yahweh would have us move forward. And then, we don't even realize when we're doing that sometimes that we're really acting like the first generation of Israel, that they just didn't move forward because of fear and unbelief. But this generation is different. When Yahweh tells them to go up against the giants, what do?
They do it because they're determined to follow his will. No doubt, in the first couple of fights, they probably did have a little bit of fear within themselves, but they went on and they did Yahweh's will because they believed in him, because they went past the natural emotion and followed what Yahweh said. He delivered them.
What you're saying is exactly how it is, because we all have fear. If you were going up against a 12-foot giant, no doubt you would have a sense of fear at the sight of that creature. However, fear doesn't have to hold us back, because if our faith is sufficient, right, we literally ignore our own fear and we move forward in Yahweh's will. And what do we see happen?
Victory.
Right. The giants start falling. The giants start falling. And you know what happened with some of these? In another place, the prophets talk about this. Yahweh sent bees against these giants. And they were so busy trying to deal with the clouds of bees all around them that the Israelites were able to cut them down like cordwood. And so, you see, Yahweh has just unending control over his own universe. And who's bigger, the giants or Yahweh?
Yahweh by infinity.
Yeah, exactly. So really, even though in our thinking a giant is big, well, if it's Yahweh that fights for us, who's bigger, right?
Right.
So we really don't have anything to fear about. And here's the thing too that Israel did here, this generation. I want to give them credit because Yahweh had told them already to totally and utterly destroy these people. And they did that. Instead of making their own judgment about that, which I think a person could be tempted to make their own judgment. Yeah. But they did what Yahweh told them to do, and they made a clean sweep of the entire thing. Sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to follow through all the way with what Yahweh tells us, but they did that. And they did that just where they were told to do that, and where they were told not to, where Yahweh forbade them, they just stayed away from that. They did exactly what he said. So what an example, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
This is the recipe for victory. What they did is the recipe for victory in every kind of warfare, including spiritual warfare and just our struggle through this world. It's just a pretty amazing few verses when we think about it in various different contexts. Now, we have this question about the men, women, and children being destroyed, all of them. I thought we would look into that a little deeper because while I think we who belong to Yahweh understand what that was about, a lot of people don't. And they just think, well, God was this bloodthirsty, crazy guy in the Old Testament. And of course, they think that because somebody told them that, and maybe they don't really understand the scriptures. They don't know what really happened. So we're going to look at some verses that have to do with this. We can go all the way back to Genesis chapter 15, where Yahweh is making a covenant with Abram and giving this land to Abram and his seed. And in the course of doing that, Yahweh told Abram what would happen with his people that would descend from him. He said, "Know for sure that your seed will live as foreigners in a land that is not theirs and will serve them." Of course, that happened with them slaves in Egypt, right? And then it says, in the fourth generation, they'll come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet full. Yahweh allowed this time in which his people were being treated like slaves, but he wasn't going to deliver them because delivering them involved striking down these Amorites. And the Amorites didn't deserve it yet.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
They were not arrived at that depth of wickedness they afterwards would and did, and which brought on their ruin, according to Gill and other commentaries, and I think according to the verse itself. And it tells you something here. Yahweh is not just bloodthirsty wanting to kill people. It's the iniquity or the wickedness of the people finally got so bad that he had to act against it. Can you think of any other times when Yahweh had to do that?
Yep. Well, the flood is a big one, of course. And then, of course, there's also Sodom. And, well, really, the list goes on for a while.
Right. And really, doesn't Yahweh have to do this for the sake of the righteous?
Yes, because the wicked, they'll trample on the righteous all day long.
That's right.
And they'll pervert them and corrupt them wherever they can.
That's exactly right. And this is true that if Israel hadn't done this, and unfortunately, as time went by through history, Israel wasn't always like that first generation. So they didn't totally wipe out all of those Canaanites, and they did end up actually practicing a lot of those Canaanite practices. And of course, then they ended up being treated like the Canaanites, right? They were thrown off of the land and so on. Well, here's some things the scriptures tell us that were done by these Canaanites. In Leviticus 18, Leviticus 20, it lists these things. It calls them abominations. Now, abominations are things that are so bad that they are outrageous. Here's some of the things. Cursing your father or mother. I don't think that sounds like such a horrible thing anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's been pretty normalized in today's society.
I think it has. And then, it lists a whole bunch of different sexual sins that were commonly practiced by those people. And I'm just going to read them. Adultery with one's neighbor's wife. Man lies with man as with a woman. Bestiality. Incest. Lies with his father's wife. Lies with his brother's wife. Lies with his son's daughter. Lies with a mother and daughter. Lies with woman with a flow of blood. So really all kinds of perverse sexual activities. These are the sorts of things that are included in the alphabet soup today, aren't they?
Yeah, LBGTQ.
You can see why they keep adding more letters, right?
Right.
Because they just keep going to greater and greater wickedness. Of course, are you supposed to think that's bad?
Not in today's society.
No.
It's supposed to be accepted and normalized.
Isn't it amazing how much like the Canaanites our modern society really is? And then, of course, it mentions channeling evil spirits, divining, and magic. Do we have any of that going on?
I think we have a lot of that going on. Pretty much everywhere you go these days, in stores and things, they are selling witch books and all of these different things. It's unfortunately very popular.
It really is. And many, many people are drawn into it and are using it. I mean, I just happen to notice that a lot of the games that younger people play include these very things, don't they?
Yeah, it's very trivialized.
Yeah, it's trivialized.
As just the same as superheroes, or
right?
something like that.
TV shows and movies, the same thing. They include all this magic and evil spirits and all of this stuff, don't they?
Yep.
So a lot of people get drawn into it through that. Here's what these verses say about all of these practices. The land of Canaan, or the Amorites, is defiled. All these abominations the men of the land have done who were before you, and thus the land is defiled. Yahweh actually felt like they had to be cleaned out of his land because they had defiled his land, and his land needed to be purified of all of this sin and evil. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think that if anybody has the right to kick someone off their land, it's Yahweh, because he owns the land. And also, he had a very good reason. All of these things are pretty much against any common sense.
Yes. And really totally debased behavior. We have more. Deuteronomy 12, 29 through 31. Now, we will be getting into this later, but I don't think we can really consider this question without realizing this part of it. So I'm going to go into it now. It says, when Yahweh your Elohim shall cut off the nations from before you, where you go in to dispossess them, and you dispossess them, and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you not be ensnared to follow them. After that they are destroyed from before you, and that you not inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? I will do likewise. You shall not do so to Yahweh your Elohim. For every abomination to Yahweh which he hates have they done to their gods. We already read a list of those abominations, right? But
Right.
then it says, even their sons and their daughters do they burn in the fire to their gods. So it's like Yahweh saying, all of those things are abominations, but this is just beyond the pale, right?
Yeah, right.
They're burning up their own children. They're killing their own children. It's a good thing modern society isn't so bad, right?
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
Well, I think you're onto something. There's been over 63 million abortions since Roe versus Wade in 1973, just here in America. That's 63 million babies that have been murdered. Do you see much difference between that and what the Canaanites were doing?
Not really. It's just put under a different face.
Exactly.
To be more modernly accepted.
Exactly. But it's the same thing. It's killing your children. There's more here. This is from Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch obtains records showing FDA paid for fresh and never frozen human fetal parts for use in humanized mice creation. Humanized mice creation. Does that remind you of anything?
Well, kind of sounds like the genetic tampering that the fallen angels did, creating giants in the first place.
Exactly. And using fresh human fetal parts. Fresh. What exactly does that mean? Fresh. Well, I want to share some information with folks now. Before I start this, I just want you to know that what I'm about to share is really going to be upsetting to people, could be very upsetting to children. You're not going to see any gore or anything, but just what is said here, I found just abhorrent. But I have to play it for you because I think it tells us something about the time that we're living in. So if anyone doesn't want to hear it, then I'm giving you due warning now. Or if you have children that you don't want to hear it, I'm giving you due warning. And now I'm going to play the video.
Welcome, everybody. I'm talking to Dr. Teresa Deischer, who is the founder, and that's the way to pronounce your name, right? Dr. Deischer?
Deischer, yes.
Okay. And she's the founder and lead scientist at Sound Choice Pharmaceutical Institute. And she has a doctorate from Stanford University in molecular and cellular physiology in 1990 and completed her postdoctoral work at the University of Washington. Her career has been spent in commercial biotechnology industry, and she has done basic work in biological and drug discovery through clinical development. So would you describe yourself as a science organization or research organization, information organization?
A research and information organization, exactly.
Okay. And your own expertise has been in looking at the impacts of the use of human fetal cells in vaccines.
Correct. Well, there is going to be a lot of human fetal DNA fragments that are going to come through the manufacturing process, and that is potentially very dangerous.
But one of the questions people are asking now is which vaccines have fetal tissue in them. And I know that for a long time, fetal cells were not used in vaccines. Almost exclusively animal cells were used. So maybe you can talk about why they started replacing the animal cells with fetal cells and which particular vaccines contain fetal tissue.
So currently the MMR vaccines, the chickenpox vaccine, one of the shingles vaccines, Zostavax, is made in fetal cells. All hepatitis A containing vaccines are made in fetal cells. Some polio containing vaccines and some rabies containing vaccines. And people can go to our website, www.soundchoice.org, and pull down a list of the vaccines.
Let me finish the other question. Why did they switch from using exclusively animal cells to fetal cells?
I think it's complicated. The animal rights movement was very active at that time. And for instance, chicken pox could have been manufactured in a guinea pig cell line, but there's quite a bit of objection to using animals for research. And the animal activists were definitely driving them to go and use the bodies of the aborted babies.
It's kind of weird to think that the animal rights activists have more clout with the vaccine companies than do the anti-abortion activists.
They do. And you know what's really alarming is the lack of outcry over human babies born alive at 5 to 6 months old, so that their hearts can be attained beating, and they have to be beating to be used in the research that's being done. The heart is stopped beating, it's not useful. You cannot use it. And so these babies are delivered alive and their hearts cut out without anesthesia. I wouldn't do that to a mouse.
What do you mean? When you say 5 months old, you're talking about a fetus that is 5 months old.
Yes.
And they are live birthed.
Yes.
And they are surgically killed.
Their hearts are cut out, or they cut through their faces to get good brain tissue.
Okay, that is horrible.
It is, and we wouldn't do that to a mouse.
You know, even watching this again now, it leaves me almost speechless to even imagine this happening. What is your reaction to this, Solomon?
Well, it's really evil. And, unfortunately, this evil spreads across all the vaccines and all the people who have taken the vaccines. And they don't even know that. Most people, they don't even know that this is happening. And it's really bad.
I think this is an example of what Yahweh was talking about defiling the land. You see, because of things like this happening, many of them things we don't even know about, we're participating in the system of this world that defiles us. And we don't even know this many times. And we all need Yahweh's forgiveness from this. Any of us who have taken these vaccines that have involved the murder of these babies, well, we have helped to create a market for this, haven't we? And, we assume that the FDA and other organizations are guarding us against this stuff, but they're actually participating in it, as we heard earlier. It's pretty amazing. And here I searched the internet to find a picture of a baby that was born prematurely after 5 months of pregnancy. And there's a story about this particular baby on the internet. The doctors told the mother that this baby would not be able to survive. Of course, they called it a fetus, and they suggested aborting it. The mother said, "No, I'm not doing that. This baby is going to be born." The mother acted like an actual mother.
Yeah.
And saved this baby's life, and this baby was born and survived and thrived. It's not just a piece of meat that you can cut up like it's a hamburger on your shelf or something. Any difference in the evil of this compared with what the Canaanites did in offering their children?
The only difference is how mass-produced this is.
Well, getting into that, here's why. You see, all these biotech companies, so many of them are wanting to have these live cells from fetuses. It's a lot of money here. You know, it kind of explains why certain organizations who claim to be not for profit give away free abortions and talk young mothers into it. Because look at what they can get out of each of these fetuses. You know, over $3,000 for a brain. That's a good reason to cut open a baby's face, huh?
Not to me.
Not to me either. But to them.
Yeah.
And limbs with hands and feet. If a skull matches, even more. Hearts, of course, we learned already, and a heart is no good unless it's beating. So this is what's really going on in modern society. But it's going on a mass scale because there's a financial incentive. By the many millions, this is going on. And it's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And of course, we shouldn't say that because it's somebody in a lab coat that's doing this. And we should all be worshiping the science god, shouldn't we? Whatever these people do, it's got to be right because it's for science, right?
That's the narrative.
Isn't that a god?
Yeah.
It's a very definition of a god, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's not Molech. It's the science god today. It's every bit as bad as the Canaanites, and probably on a much larger scale than what they were doing. So this is why evil must be destroyed. If that's what happened with the Canaanites, what should we expect to happen shortly as the world keeps doing this stuff?
Probably the same process that happened back in the first Exodus.
There's got to be a judgment. You know, just like with the Amorites, for a long time, the wickedness had not been full. But when it reached a point that it was full, Yahweh judged it and wiped it out. This is coming, friends. You know, I've told you about the curse tablet that was found in Mount Ebal. And it says, you're cursed, you're cursed, you're cursed. 10 times it says that. It's not a joke. It's not a mistake that has been found now. Because there are people who are working to bring in the global government, and all of this stuff that we're seeing now is going to reign during that whole era. It's going to be judged. It's going to be judged. Well, let us move on. Would you read this for us, Saul?
Yes. Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan. Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. Yahweh said to me, don't fear him, for I have delivered him with all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon. So Yahweh our Elohim delivered into our hand Og also, the king of Bashan, and all his people. We struck him until no one was left to him remaining.
Yahweh is a God of justice, and he wiped all these people out because that whole culture could not be allowed to live anymore. It was so corrupt, it would end up destroying the whole world too soon. So Yahweh did to Sihon's brother Og what he had done to Sihon, and Israel once again was delivered the victory from Yahweh against the giant king Og. This is how the second generation of Israel began their campaign. What do you think of this?
I think it's pretty awesome. I think it's kind of indicative, at least perhaps in a more spiritual sense, perhaps what the overall the scattered remnant of Israel in the second Exodus is going to be like. Because Yahweh tends to kind of not really repeat things, but kind of like that in the sense that he'll do something similar.
Yes.
So I think we can expect something similar, maybe not literal giants, but something surely of a giant magnitude.
Very much so. Very much so. And Yahweh wants to make himself great in the midst of his remnant people. This is what's coming up. And the same principles that were at work in the verses we're reading are at work with his remnant people and the things that he is planning to do. And it's quite amazing what he's planning to do. Well, I guess I'll do a little reading. It says, "We took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we didn't take from them. 60 cities, all the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many towns without walls. We utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying every inhabited city, with the women and the little ones. But all the livestock and the plunder of the cities we took for plunder for ourselves. We took the land at that time out of the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, from the valley of the Arnon to Mount Hermon." So here it tells us of this incredible victory where the Israelites, working with Yahweh, pressed the battle all the way through that entire territory, took 60 cities from Og, and these were well-fortified cities. Yahweh caused them all to fall before Israel, and they utterly destroyed all of them, utterly destroyed the men, women, and children, along with Sihon and the giants, and it says they plundered them, and they took their land. And this is all the way from the valley of the Arnon to Mount Hermon. And now, knowing what we do about Mount Hermon and why the giants were there, why do you think these people had become so evil that the whole race had to be exterminated?
Well, it seems pretty evident that they were participating in this wicked demon worship.
That's right. I mean, this is why those giants would gravitate back there as soon as they had a chance, right? Because they were instituting that wicked demonic worship. So all of these practices, these evil practices they had introduced, and these people were just totally beyond any kind of repentance, beyond being fixed. You know, this can happen. People actually can become so bad that there's no way back. They can become completely corrupted. We read about that in Genesis, right? How every thought of their heart was only evil all the time.
Yeah.
So this was no doubt true of these people as well. So it's interesting that what was judgment that was against the wicked happened to be a boon to the righteous. The righteous received all that plunder, received the land, was given to them. Do you see any kind of spiritual principle in that?
Very much so. You know, as long as we allow wickedness to hold possession over what is Yahweh's, then the righteous, they don't get any of those things. But when we press against the wickedness and we stand up against it, no compromise, we can reclaim what's Yahweh's and we can receive that.
That's right. This is really the secret to victory. It's, you see, what a lot of people do with spiritual warfare is they just fight a defensive war. They just try to defend themselves against the wicked forces. What the Israelites did here, what Yahweh told them to do, is they pressed the battle all the way. And they weren't satisfied until they completely routed the evil totally out. Well, on the spiritual level, isn't this what we have to do with our lives? Is just keep fighting the battle until we totally rout the evil out of our lives?
Yeah. And from that point, when we do completely router the evil from our lives, it helps us to be in a place where we can further push up Yahweh's goals and push back the enemy's assault on the righteous.
Right. And you know, one of the reasons why they needed to do this so completely we've already read. Yahweh told them that it was so that they wouldn't take up these same practices, right?
Right.
And this is what happens if we continue to allow evil people to be close to us in our lives. We become sympathetic towards them, and we can very easily take up the same attitudes and same practices. So the scriptures continually tell us to separate ourselves from the practice of evil. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't witness to people who are in sin, because, of course, we need to do that. But that's different than having such people as our friends and those who are close to us. Really, wickedness and righteousness can't exist together. And it calls on us to do what Yahweh says, to truly be a holy people.
Yeah, that's the whole reason that we are called set apart.
Yes, that's right. And the remnant. That's who the remnant are. They're the ones that truly have set themselves apart from the world. Here's some more. Would you read this for us, Saul?
Yes, I can. The Sidonians call Hermon Sirion, and the Amorites call it Senir. We took all the cities of the plain, and all Gilead, and all Bashan, to Selecah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Isn't it in Rabbah of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits its width, after the cubit of a man.
So this bed could have been anywhere from 14 feet to like 18 feet, depending on what cubit you go by. So truly, he was a giant.
Yeah.
Truly was a giant. I have a theory about this. I want to say that it's just a theory. I don't have proof that this is true. But it seems to me like the closer that these giants are to being the original giants fathered by a fallen angel, the bigger to me that they seem to be. That as generations go on, perhaps they're not as big. This is just a thought that I had. So that, this is later after the Tower of Babel. And so you have a giant here that may be 14 feet. Now, that's a pretty big giant. But when you realize some of them were as big as cedar trees, even this is not as big as some of them were.
Yeah. Well, I think that would tend to make sense because, for instance, if you have a father and a mother of different races, if the next generation you have less of one of those races, then slowly throughout generations, it'll become less and less of that race. So I think it would probably make sense that they would get smaller as they are just going through humans, I guess.
Well, that was just a theory of why the great variance in size among the giants. But, of course, it is just a theory, so I want to underscore that. Here's a map that we looked at earlier, and the big yellow line there shows the whole distance that Israel inherited through these victories. And it was really quite huge, all the way from the Arnon all the way up to Mount Hermon. Really quite a huge area. And this is before now, remember, they haven't even crossed the Jordan into the Promised Land proper yet. This is all on the east side of the Jordan that they're having this tremendous victory. It's really pretty amazing what Yahweh did for them there. Here, too, in this map, you can see pretty well all of these various Canaanite nations. And they had wiped out these Canaanites now on the east side of the Jordan. But look at how many are left now on the west side of the Jordan. There's still
quite a lot.
And all of these, too, have been influenced by the giants and their demonic worship. So all of these are to be also exterminated from the land as they eventually go into the land. Would you read this for us?
Yes. This land we took in possession at that time, from Aror, which is by the valley of the Arnon, and half the hill country of Gilead, and its cities, gave I to the Reubenites and to the Gadites, and the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, gave I to the half-tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob, even all Bashan, the same is called the land of Rephaim. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Argob to the border of the Geshurites and the Kathites, and called them even Bashan, after his own name, Havoth Jair, to this day. I gave Gilead to Machir.
So I think it's interesting that the people that fought for the land in given areas were given the land. Here's a map showing what we just were looking at and where the various tribes were given land. So we have Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh all sharing that land with their particular possession along here. I'll read this. To the Reubenites and to the Gadites I gave from Gilead even to the valley of the Arnon, the middle of the valley and its border even to the river Jabbok, which is the border of the children of Ammon. The Arabah also, and the Jordan and its border, from Chinnereth even to the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, under the slopes of Pisgah, eastward. So I think already that place would be a lot better to be. You got all those giants on the east side wiped out, all those evil Canaanites out of there, and it might be a place now where you'd want to raise your children, don't you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that Yahweh did there. Could you read these verses 18 through 20?
Yes, sir. I commanded you at that time, saying, Yahweh, your Elohim, has given you this land to possess it. You shall pass over armed before your brothers, the children of Israel, all the men of valor. But your wives and your little ones and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall live in your cities which I have given you, until Yahweh gives rest to your brothers as to you, and they also possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim gives them beyond the Jordan. Then you shall each return to his own possession which I have given you.
Now, we read about this in the book of Numbers, and basically there were these tribes that had a lot of livestock who asked to have this particular land. And Yahweh told Moses what to tell them, that they could have that land as their possession, and as it's explaining here, their wives and their little ones could stay there and take care of it. There were no giants or anybody to bother them now, right? Then the men, though, the fighting men, they were to go along with the rest of the nation to conquer the rest of the land, and it's only after the other tribes had their land would the warriors from the tribes east of the Jordan be able to return to their own land. What do you think of that deal?
I think that makes a lot of sense because, of course, most likely all 12 tribes helped in the battles against these giants. So it only makes sense to me that these tribes would continue to ensure that their brothers were able to get land of their own.
Do you think Yahweh's nation right now has this same kind of attitude that we see in these verses?
No, unfortunately not.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I think that there's probably more than one reason, but I think a main reason would probably be that I say we, as in the community of believers, don't really all agree on Yahweh, I guess. And so they don't really have one localized authority.
I think a lot of us, there's a lot of believers, because I'm talking about all believers who are true believers. Most of us don't even know that we're going to be returning to the land, don't we? I mean, isn't that true?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, and don't you think that most believers probably think the country they live in is where they should give their allegiance?
Probably, yeah.
And yet, our covenant nation is Israel, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think what these verses show us is that we have a duty to our nation Israel. And as with these tribes, that duty should come before our own personal wealth and comfort to see that our nation has what it needs. How do you think that could apply to the remnant today?
Well, I think that it's very important because I think that in order for there to even be a remnant nation that comes from all the different nations of the world, they would need to understand that Israel is really priority number one.
Right, right, because Israel is the covenant nation. So this does require all of us perhaps to think about things a little differently than we have in the past, and to realize that truly our deliverance from this world in the physical sense could very well depend upon our nation. And it's going to take all of us pulling together to accomplish Yahweh's will for his nation. So it's not just a matter of, oh, well, I'd like to go in the second Exodus, but the question is, what are you willing to do to help that to happen, right? So I think that's something that we all need to think about as we look at this particular portion of Scripture.
And I also would just have to say that I think it's important that we take time to pray about that and what role we individually might have in that, and what perhaps we should be doing that we don't know about, or even some aspect that we should be focusing on.
Exactly. I think those are excellent thoughts, Solomon, and it really behooves us all to do those things. Let's continue reading. Would you read this?
Yes. Verse 21 and 22. I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, Your eyes have seen all that Yahweh your Elohim has done to these two kings. So shall Yahweh do to all the kingdoms where you go over. You shall not fear them, for Yahweh your Elohim himself fights for you.
I think probably Joshua had caught on to that by now, don't you think?
I would certainly hope so.
But it's a very good advice nonetheless, and it's good advice for all of us to know truly it's Yahweh that fights for us, and that he is capable of doing the things that he promises for his remnant nation. Then Moses says, I begged Yahweh at that time, saying, Lord Yahweh, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what Elohim is there in heaven or in earth that can do works like yours, and mighty acts like yours? Please let me go over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that fine mountain, and Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes, and didn't listen to me. Yahweh said to me, Let this satisfy you. Speak no more to me of this matter. What do you think of this? Was Yahweh being mean?
No. You know, Yahweh, he never goes back on his word. And he had told Moses after he struck the rock that he would not enter the land because Moses totally disobeyed Yahweh in a moment of anger in something that was very important. So Yahweh is true to his word, and so he wouldn't change it. And I think he's completely valid in doing that.
Okay. If Yahweh was angry with Moses about this, does this mean that Yahweh was displeased with Moses generally?
No.
I think it's important for us to realize this, that Yahweh can be unhappy with some behavior of ours and even apply some discipline to us about it. But that's what a father does with his children, isn't it? Yeah. Doesn't a good father correct his children? And elsewhere throughout the scriptures, when we read about Moses, well, for instance, in Hebrews, it says that Moses was faithful in all of Yahweh's house. And this is how the scriptures regard Moses. So I think we should just understand about Yahweh that he's just not the big pushover in the sky that a lot of people think he is. He truly is a good father, and he measures things out. All of his judgments are just. And when he says to Moses, I don't want to hear about this again, it means he's done with this. He's not going to change his mind.
The case is closed.
Exactly. And that can happen. And what's interesting about this is that while Moses asked He didn't stop serving Yahweh. He didn't complain to Yahweh and say, well, that isn't fair. He didn't have a tantrum. He accepted this judgment. But you know what? Yahweh did act in such a way as to soften this for Moses. And we see that in the next verses. He says, go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward and see with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. So he did give him the opportunity to look into the land. And I think this must have been a very special time for Moses. What do you think about it?
Well, you know what I really love about Yahweh is that it really is a relationship. You know, Moses brought up and prayed to Yahweh that he could go back into the land. But obviously, Yahweh had already spoken, so he couldn't do that. But he did really feel the passion that Moses had, that he wanted to see the land and that he wanted to be a part of that. So I think Yahweh did this to kind of comfort Moses because, you know, it is a real relationship. It's a real partnership. And Yahweh cares about us.
Those are very good thoughts. Read this for us.
Sure, verse 28 and 29. But commission Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you shall see. So we stayed in the valley near Beth Peor.
I think Moses might have had mixed feelings. I'm not saying he didn't want to encourage Joshua, but do you think it would be hard for him as a leader now to see this other man was going to take over and his tenure was going to be up?
Yeah, well, you know, he spent over 42 years leading the people of Israel, and, you know, he loved them, and he wanted to make sure that they had the correct leadership and that they had a man that would really lead them through faith with Yahweh. So no doubt he had some apprehensions because that is something that, you know, takes some thought.
You know, this actually exists with men. Men are naturally kind of competitive. I think it's kind of hard sometimes when we see somebody else that has some privilege of service that we'd like to have. What do you think can help a man when he's seeing that and kind of feeling hurt that that's not his job now?
Well, you know, I think it's important to weigh what really matters because I think that, you know, there's times when we would like to go ahead in a certain area, but ultimately there may be somebody better suited to do that. And I think kind of to take a step back and to look at the person and really think about what Yahweh is doing with them.
I think that's right. And you know, this thing that we're talking about is doing the Father's will. It's not always easy because it's not always our will. No doubt Moses would have liked to continue leading Israel forever, right?
Right.
Because he loved them and it had been his life. And so no doubt he felt that feeling. And yet, as always, he wanted Yahweh's will above his own. And so he just totally cooperated with what Yahweh wanted him to do to suit Joshua for this task. And so he encouraged him forward. Well, this is the last of our verses for tonight. And we have a few things that we'd like to review and discuss. You can continue with me on this, Saul. These are things that we learned. We'll just go through this. We learned that Israel had the victory over the land of the giants because they recognized the ownership of Yahweh of the earth. They showed that by only conquering such land as Yahweh designated and not bothering any people, Yahweh said to leave be. The giants themselves had to be destroyed to protect the seed of man in his image. Israel's conquest of the giants and their Amorite nations was Yah's means of destroying extreme wickedness that deserved to be exterminated as an infestation of extreme evil upon Yah's holy land. It was Yahweh who both directed and won the battles. Israel's job was to have faith to move forward in obedience to the divine will. As Israel did so, they displaced and plundered the enemy, expanding and building the kingdom. Now, I have a few more notes regarding the remnant today, and I'd just like to read these and discuss these. The world today is practicing the same evils and worse than the Canaanites, so will soon meet its just end. We have not been called to be instruments of Yah's judgments against the wicked. I think this is important because we need to realize we haven't been commissioned to be the instruments of justice against the wicked. And we are, however, in a war with the wicked spirits, and we need to fight that spiritual war. We have been called to be a holy nation, separating ourselves from the wickedness of the world. We each have a responsibility to act in common cause together for the good of our nation. We must not fear but trust in Yahweh, doing all he commands us to do as part of his holy nation. Israel conquers the giants by walking in faith, and so can each of us. And Yahweh owns the land, and it is his to give his remnant our own possession in it via the remnant exodus. So those are some of the notes that I made that are relevant to the remnant from this study. Do you have any thoughts about any of those or any other thing for the remnant?
Well, I think that sometimes Yahweh can say something or do something that can at first be very shocking. For instance, if you were just to read that verse where they kill everyone, including the women and the children, you may at first be quite shocked by that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's very important when he does something like that we follow in faith and yet pray about that at the same time. If it's something that at first goes against our nature, I think it's important that we pray about that and pray to keep walking in his will, because Yahweh is just and he always knows what to do.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely true. He is just. And unfortunately, sometimes human beings don't really grasp the exceeding sinfulness of sin. We don't necessarily always see just how evil it is, how harmful it is. And because we don't really see that about sin, then when Yahweh acts appropriately against it, it can seem like he's being too harsh. But we have to have his view of sin instead of the world's view of sin, and then we can understand why Yahweh has to act so decisively against evil. And we're coming up towards the end of the age. We're not that far from the very end when Yahweh will judge the wicked. And the truth is, he's going to kill a lot of wicked people. This should not come as news to anybody because it's throughout the scriptures. It's in the book of Revelation, and we can just read that for ourselves. He's going to do it, though. He's not telling us to do it. He's going to do it. And it's going to be very selective, like what we read today. When he exercises justice against the world, it's going to be against the wicked, not the righteous. And the reason why he's raising up his remnant nation is because there needs to be a place for the righteous to go and to be able to seek refuge during this amazing time that is ahead, called the Great Tribulation, for a reason. So this is why Yahweh is doing all of this now. It's because of his righteousness. But even in the midst of exercising justice against the wicked, he shows mercy to the righteous and cares for all of our needs. He really does that. And he's going to see us through this very difficult time that we are facing.
And right now is the time to decide, not then.
You're so right, Solomon. Well, Solomon, it's so good to have you on this program with me. And I think probably everybody really enjoyed what you had to share and your presence with us. So I just want to thank you for being part of this particular meeting. And for now, we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
So I think we'll sum up for tonight and just think about all of these amazing things that we have found in the book of Deuteronomy. Don't you think this is an amazing study? And it just keeps getting more amazing the more you get into it. So thank you for being with us for this Midrash, Utterly Destroy and Plunder the Giants. If you'd like to dig a little deeper into the subject of giants, you might enjoy my newsletter from today, because there's a very interesting article in there with news reports, many of them of sightings of actual giant skeletons that have been dug up. And to get that, if you don't get the newsletter right now, you will need to go to eliyahubendavid.substack.com, and you'll be able to obtain the newsletter there. Thank you for being with us this evening. Now, let's pray. Father, we want to thank you tonight for your word of truth. Things we really wouldn't know unless you had caused those things to be written down for us to know and understand the truth. We thank you, Father, for this knowledge of our ancient people of Israel battling against the giants and overcoming them by your power. Father, this so encourages us as we stand up against obstacles in the modern world, which really are every bit sometimes as daunting as giants were back then. And Father, by your power, your strength, your Holy Spirit, your people today can come up against those obstacles and overcome them in your name. So, Father, I pray tonight for your remnant people who have been enjoying this presentation. I pray for them that they might identify the giants in their lives, and by your power and in your name, they can stand up to those giants and to overcome them. And Father, we know your people are an overcoming people. We pray, Father, that we might overcome every obstacle to accomplish your will in the world. We pray that your people will rise up and overcome the giants so that we might draw together as your nation and that you might take us home in the remnant Exodus. Father, we thank you for being with us. We thank you for your word. We thank you above everything else for your Son, Yeshua, through whom, Father, we are saved, and through whom we will enter into all of your promises. In his name, the name of Yeshua Messiah, we pray. Amen. Now let's enter into some worship music together.
You brought us out with a mighty hand, broke our chains and split the sea, led us on through the deserts and kept us close so faithfully. Fire by night and cloud by day, you guarded us along the way. Now we stand where fear must fade. Now we're told, don't be afraid. The land is good, the word is clear, but promise dies when fed by fear. Go up and take the land. Yahweh goes before you. Do not fear, the giants stand. Yah's mighty hand is for you. He who bore you through the wild will not leave you here to fall. Trust the voice that called you child. Our God is restlessness made our courage die, to blow away like desert sand. Murmurs rose inside the tents, as though his love had turned to hate. But unbelief can blind the heart, to leave the promise at the gate. The land was near, the food was sweet, but fear turned faith into retreat. Go up and save the land. Yahweh goes before you, do not see the giant stand. His mighty hand is for you, he will bear you through the mile, will not leave you here to fall. Trust the voice that's called you child, our God is able over. We face our giants even now, the threats are loud, the road is steep, but Yahweh who kept his people then is Yahweh whose love will never sleep. Not by breath